Hello and welcome, I'm Liam the Music Reviewer. Decode by Paramore deserved better, and today we're going to be talking about the debut album from Gershon's Immunological Orchestra. I'm just going to say GIO from now on because I'm just going to end up stumbling my way through this review. And their debut project, something from the early 70s. GIO is the project by Josh $, you might know him off Twitter. I know him, I would consider him a good pal, which is why I'm giving this disclaimer that I do know Josh, and yeah, just so there's no sort of ambiguity, much in the same way that I reviewed the Vale Smith project a few months back, I believe it was. I'm just going to be upfront and transparent. I won't be holding back any punches about any sort of people that I do know when I'm reviewing their music, because criticism helps you improve and just means that you can get to that stage that you really want to. There would be no point sugarcoating anything that I'm about to say. But yeah, I've talked to Josh about this project on the most recent podcast with the other Transistor Cast boys. You can go to that and find out some more little tidbits about it. But anyway, let's talk about the album itself, which is an ambient drone release that from the get-go lets you know that this is a record that had a lot of love for sci-fi, for space, especially 70s sci-fi stuff, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, like Ridley Scott films. Like there's an obvious love there, and I think Josh manages to use this to his advantage. It never feels like a nostalgia bait or a oh look I know this thing. It feels like he manages to totally use this to his advantage and make a obviously influenced record, but one that benefits from these obvious influences. The intro starts off with a dialogue that there's a few kind of like dialogue heavy bits. The bar one, I'm not really sure what the source of it is, so if you do know, you can let me know. If Josh himself lets me know, I can make a guess that there's it's probably something to do with Philip K. Dick, because there's a lot of kind of homage to him here. But the album really gets started on the track How Not to Land, which really does do a good job of investing you into the sound here. Just hearing like the compressed flames behind you as if you're in the ship itself, the ethereal sounds themselves that just make it feel totally immersive, kind of have you feeling totally captivated. And then it all comes to like the crash landing that feels just almost as if you're on like some sort of like ride where like everything's just kind of going on. It gets to that point where you yourself are wondering, is this like, it's almost like a kind of like an audiobook of like some sort of movie like The Martian or something like that, where you're just kind of like, you're kind of thrown into the deep end. And I have to commend this album for doing that. It's self-assured in its execution, and it just has like this utterly thick, rich atmosphere. Sadly though, I do think that this is kind of like the high moment for this album. I never feel like it does manage to replicate it again. Not to say there's not any good tracks here, or that the album starts to become utterly just kind of devoid of any sort of charm or quality after it, but this is like my obvious favourite track here. And when it comes to the next two tracks, Philip K. Dick, or it's not called Philip K. Dick, it's just called K. Dick Part 1 and 2, I feel like the transition between these two tracks could be a lot smoother. I feel that in its current state it's just a bit janky. This is a debut project after all, so this is stuff that can easily be smoothed out and refined in future releases, but it's just something I had to bring up. That being said, so K. Dick Part 2 proves to be a lot more interesting than Part 1. I just think, again, much like How Not to Land, it manages to create just this kind of like thick atmosphere. It even brings in some sort of like cheesy 70s vibes at points. Like I say, it does manages to kind of like replicate these things from a era long gone, and use it in a way it doesn't feel like it's just kind of like pandering or nostalgia bait, and it just gives it more character. And then it eventually kind of goes into this like full noise territory, and it's just so concerning, kind of puts you on the edge of your seat, and really does catch you off guard just from like how the vibe of that from these two parts was before. It does feel like it justifies and stretching out to that sort of length, and it really does make you feel like you're on this unknown planet that's utterly dangerous. You don't know what might be lurking there, and I feel like that was Josh's intention on this record, to kind of like create this kind of vibe that these sci-fi movies and sci-fi literature is managed to do before, and to do it without really any dialogue bar the sampling and a recital by Josh himself using a vocoder, I think it was, really does go to show how even in a debut project it has been commended that he's managed to come to this result. Also in part two, I need to mention how these warning sirens almost become like an industrial rave synth line. Like I just really thought that was quite cool and something that I definitely thought of while writing the notes for this review. We get black vinyl that acts kind of like the breathing space, and just kind of like a kind of good little kind of interlude and intermission before the next track comes along. Unfortunately for me, Dust Dated, the track that follows it, does just feel a little bit vapid. I do think it doesn't really do much to hold my interest personally, and I know with ambient drone music I might not be the most informed or like a huge like connoisseur of it, but I do know like what it requires, and I do think that if the song doesn't really feel like it benefits at runtime and there's not really any overall payoff, that it kind of like it fails a little bit. And I do feel like Dust Dated is like one of like the kind of just weaker tracks on this record. We've got another interlude here, and again my memory's not the best, so I can't tell if this is sampled from a movie or not, but it does do a good way of kind of like contrasting the ambitiousness of the space race, and then really kind of just put into perspective like the journey that we have been through with this unidentified protagonist here who's just been through just a disastrous time. We're feeling this fear that he's going through because not only has he had to face like the terrors of just like the reality of a situation, but also having to speculate like what he doesn't know. I really do think that's a cool thing that Josh managed to pull off here. Again, we get another transition that I do feel is a bit janky, and really these are things that, like I say, can be refined, but it does kind of ruin the flow. These two tracks, the transition by way being dash dash and dash dash dash, I feel like that's what it's meant to be, like Morse code. Again, if I'm wrong, please tell me, but that's what I thought it was anyway. And again, much like Dust Dated, I do feel like dash dash dash, the latter one is one that does a good job of keeping my interest, just far too late for me. When it came to it, like there's always kind of like distortion and dust and scratches that again just create this thick blanket of uneasiness and anxiety. And this album just in general does, when it comes to creating like an atmosphere or some sort of feeling, it does a really good job. If it's not anxiety or fear, sometimes it's more like just emptiness and more that sort of like different sort of kind of just anxiousness. Turns out kind of does that where like you just start kind of asking your questions like, what are we doing, are we meant to be here sort of scenario. But I think the biggest criticism I can have with this album, bar the transitions, was I don't really think the hour and a half run time, which is essentially the length of a short film, or not a short film, sorry, but like a regular kind of film, like 90 minutes, which I think was possibly Josh's kind of like concept of, oh, I'll have it kind of like as a film, have kind of like these 3 stages basically, which feels like again like how we're establishing this whole space race. Guy crash lands, goes for this planet, just feels just this fear. It's almost like a horror kind of movie at points with those sci-fi elements, then comes back and then just brings back whatever this thing he's found is. But I think a lot of it, I think it could be a lot tighter. And while I do think it was very ambitious to have like an album of this size, especially for your first record, I do feel like a good kind of quarter of it does feel that it's kind of stretching the mark a little bit. And I feel sometimes the effort and time spent doesn't really pay off as much as I would hope it would. That being said, though, there's a lot of highlights. As I say, How Not to Land is a good one. Even some of the weaker songs have like really good moments, but there is just some bits where I just feel it's a bit kind of vapid and that I wanted a bit more to chew on. As it stands, Josh did a good job. I'll link to the bandcamp since that's the only place where it's available. Support him, because God knows artists aren't getting paid the amount they do, and even if you're just going to kind of give £2, £3 just to listen to it, I feel you will get something out of this. Even if you're not a big fan of ambient drone, you might end up feeling more positive than I did on it. But you did a good job, Josh. I'm feeling a strong 6 on this. I do feel like if the transitions were a lot smoother I feel if just the songs where I wasn't so keen on were just kind of like tinkered a little bit with, or just were just kind of like scrapped altogether, I feel this would be a far more tighter project. But as it stands, a really good starting point for GIO as a project. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. But if you guys listen to it, let me know what you guys think. I know that this won't be getting much discussion other than just the music review community as a whole, but I would be interested in seeing other people listening to it and talking about it. But yeah, guys, I've been Liam the Music Reviewer, and as always, stay safe and stay hydrated.